My name is Priya Sharma. I'm part of the Edge Compute Product Management team. First of all, thank you everyone, the Tech Field Day team, all the delegates for coming here. And in today's session, we are going to talk about why edge computing matters and how edge computing is different from a traditional computing environment. And then we are going to deep dive into my favorite DL145, our Edge ProLiant server we just launched in September. And then two of my colleagues will join me today. Gary Wang, Product Manager for Edge Compute Solutions. He's going to talk about how our HPE solutions tackle with real-world customer challenges. And then we'll have Chris Bradley, Director of Technical Enablement Team, who's going to talk about our management software, secured software that can help with managing all the edge deploys, all the devices at the edge, compute ops management. And then finally, we'll wrap up with how everything fits into our broader edge compute portfolio. So let's get started. So let's talk about why edge computing matters, right? So we'll start with the market first. IDC predicts the market for edge hardware and edge software solutions is going to be about $358 billion by 2027. That's a huge growth. And when we look at that kind of growth, that's usually because of the driving demand for the latency-sensitive applications, plus the need for data security and AI opportunities. And then if you move on to this side, 77% of organizations consider edge workloads highly critical. What that tells me that these organizations, they are not just tinkering with edge, they're actually running real-time analytics at the edge and making decisions. So think about
Priya,
this way.
I want to interrupt for a second, Jack Pauler.
Yeah.
What is HP's definition of the edge?
HP's edge, we consider edge as a unique location.
Okay.
Which is typically outside of a data center. Think of retail store, factory floor, outdoors, any field. Mm-hmm. That's the definition of edge. So it's a unique location.
For you, is it just basically anything that's outside of a data center is considered edge?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So coming back to all the data that kind of paints the picture of how edge computing is important. So these 77% of the organizations, they do consider edge as critical workload. So, and they rely on the systems to run their critical applications. So if their systems go down, that will actually hit their bottom line and customer experience. And then this is an interesting one. 25% of the servers will be shipped out, will be located outside of the edge, located at the edge, sorry, by 2027. And that's an interesting one because when I think about this one, I'm thinking 1 out of 4 servers will live outside of a data center. And that's a massive shift in terms of how we think about the hardware, the management, and the reliability, right?
Excuse me, but to Jack's point though, that number's like based on IDC, right? So
yes.
There's 2 kinds of edges.
Right.
To those guys, you've got the far edge,
far
which
edge.
is the device, and then you've got
call
it the metro or macro edge,
sure.
which is outside of the core data center. It could be a data center,
right?
So does your version of edge, comply with that, or are you really just talking about device on site at customer presence?
So in my version of edge, I'm talking about far sites, but you're right. There is a near edge, right? There will be customers like content delivery network or service providers who may run in their own secure facility in a data center environment, very controlled environment, and that is still considered as. So you're right. So there will be near edge too. So in this definition, I'm thinking about the far edge where it's in some remote customer location.
And what we've seen, I think, in talking to a lot of companies that are building edge applications is that the change here is actually the S word, the server word, because in many cases, there are a lot of devices running applications at the edge, but they're not servers. They're actually not appropriate hardware. They're little desktops. They're sometimes, the Intel NUC kind of devices and so on. Yeah. And what I think people are finding is that in many cases, those devices aren't well suited to these harsh environments. And so we're seeing a whole new wave of companies developing really nice servers that are designed for that environment that offer a lot more hardware capabilities than these sort of, repurposed desktops would.
Right. Absolutely right. Yeah, we do see a lot of those devices, but then we also see customers asking for those bigger devices where they can do data aggregation and the process the data. So they do need something powerful there. So now that we have talked about the market, how edge computing matters, now let's talk about the edge itself, like how the architecture looks like. So in my initial years, this is where I used to see where all the processing used to happen, the data center. And we think of data center as a very controlled environment. You see stable power, you see stable cooling, you always have on-site dedicated IT folks who are only steps away to fix things if anything goes wrong. And then with edge computing, you see a distributed architecture where all the low latency apps, they reside on premises. And when we think of on-premises location, we are thinking about back of the retail store or a warehouse or a factory floor, basically anything that is outside of data center. And they don't have any IT support and they don't have the proper cooling or limited power. So that's why we call that environment as an uncontrolled environment. And then let's deep dive into what we typically hear from our customers when it comes to uncontrolled in an environment. So space is a big one. I pretty much hear this from every single customers. Customers, like I was talking to a retail customer and they were saying that they wanted to use an edge server for POS analytics and they were planning to put the server under their POS system. And it's a very, very short depth cabinet where they wanted to put it. So they wanted something small. Similarly, other customers, like a manufacturer I was talking to, they said that they have no space for IT infrastructure, so they wanted to put their equipments, hang it probably on a wall. And they had these big cabinets that was hanging from the wall, and they wanted to put everything over there. So bottom line, a lot of customers have a lot of space limitations, and they're always looking for something compact that can fit into those tight spaces. And then noise is another one that I hear a lot, mostly from our retail customers where they're planning to deploy their compute solution in a very human environment, which is, and they get a lot of foot traffic and their employees are working next to it, to the server. So they always want something that's very quiet so that it doesn't disturb their employees. And then airborne particles is another one that I hear mostly from the manufacturing guys. These guys, they mention their environment as very, very dusty and it doesn't get cleaned up very often. So they're always looking for some sort of a filtration system in their server. And then temperature challenges. We hear a lot about these different temperature ranges from our customer. I was talking to this customer last month and they were talking about video surveillance in their parking lot. And one of them said that sometimes in the summer, their temperature can go from 120 degree Fahrenheit to 130 degree Fahrenheit. So they want a server that can work on those during those extreme conditions. And then security is another one. And when we talk to our customers about security, they're not just talking about the data security. They also want to hear about physical security of the system. So we hear that a lot from our customers about how to make sure that some person is not going to just take the server away. And then management is pretty much that we hear from every single customers, because majority of these customer use cases that we see, customers are talking about deploying hundreds and thousands of edge devices in different locations, and they need some sort of a mechanism to make sure they can remotely manage and update their devices from a single GUI. So these are all the diverse needs that we typically see at the edge. Okay, so now let's talk about HP ProLiant DL145 Gen 11. So a little backstory. 2 years ago, we were at Discover, and Krista, our VP, she was talking to some of the sales folks, and they reached out to her. They said that they're hearing about different needs from their customers, and there is a possibility that our current portfolio may need something different. And then Krista connected us with them, and then we sat down with them. We talked to almost 30 plus customers, and that's how we kind of captured all of their requirements. And then we made sure during the development phase for DL145, we made sure that all of these requirements were going to be met with DL145. And then, so let's start talking about the space constraints that I just mentioned. DL145 is a very, very compact server, as you can see here. It's almost 50% smaller than your traditional data center servers. It's about 16 inches deep, and it's also full. It's not full rack width. It's about 15 inches wide. So you can just slide it into a very tight space. Or you can just put it on a wall. It comes with a wall mounting kit also. And then,
so Guy Courier. So it's not a full rack width. I can see that.
Yeah.
It can look like a half rack width.
No, it is not.
So, and that's what that little slug on the side is for. Yeah. Is that if you're going to rack it,
Yes, it comes with rack enablement kit.
like a brick.
Yeah, so that you can also rack it. And then it also comes with a wall mounting kit, so you can put it on a wall.
If you're not going to rack it, but you want to, have a 3-node cluster.
Sure.
What do you just put it on shelves? What are you going
Up
to
on the
do?
wall.
So typically what I've seen customers with 3-node cluster, they have this tiny micro data center rack.
Okay, so yeah.
They just slide it in like 2 nodes, maybe with a switch and a UPS. That's the typical configuration that I've seen.
I guess actually my real question is if that still conforms to a standard so that people can some sort of standard for smaller
Sure.
rack. I'm not fully
Not a
up on all
special
the
rack for
standards.
that, but I think that,
Yeah.
It can, the standard rack is about 19 inches wide,
Yeah.
and this is 15.
Yeah.
So it comes with a rack enablement kit. Once you install that kit, you can easily slide it into a 19-inch rack.
I'm interested in the depth as well. Is it 13 inches, please?
This is 16 inches.
Oh, okay. Because I just set up one of those yesterday, actually, and it's only 13 inches deep. So I guess I'll have to get a bigger one if I.
But if you take this dust filter that goes in the front, it will be around 20 inches. Okay. The reason, our typical bezels, they're usually like 1 inches, but we went with 4 inches because it's all front cable server. So the cables have to come out from the side, and we wanted to make sure that the bezel doesn't impact with the cable bending. So that's why it is about 4 inches wide, and they all come out from the side. We have fan opening on both the sides.
Yeah. Well, that's actually really incredible too, because again, I was actually literally setting one of these things up in a edge data center yesterday, and a lot of servers have cables front and back.
Yeah.
And you have to provide actually extra space on both ends.
Yeah.
Having everything on one end, having cable guides, all this stuff really goes to the requirements that these environments have.
Right.
And the fact that the thing is basically ready to, you could really just set it down without a rack enclosure is really valuable too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And can it be mounted? So it can be mounted vertical with your rack mount kit. You can hang it in a vertical rack configuration.
Right.
Okay.
But this particular bezel, it is optional because I've seen a lot of those use cases where they're putting it in a disaster recovery vehicle. They have their own special kind of rack, and the doors come with a filter itself. So that's why we made this optional, because not every customer is going to use this. But for a retail environment where you're putting one or two of these, they use this a lot. Yeah.
So what's the power consumption on this thing? And because I see the fans there look kind of small and
Yes.
noisy, I imagine they're not.
So power consumption, max power is about 900 watt. A fully loaded configuration is about 900 watt.
But it's probably not anywhere near that under a normal configuration, right? I mean, that's maximum.
That's a maximum configuration, 900 watt, and it comes with redundant power supply, so you can have two of these or one of these. It will easily operate. And when I'm talking about fully loaded server, I'm talking about 3 NVIDIA L4s.
Oh, I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
No, I'm like without that. Let's say
Even without that, the minimum is about 350, 365. I can go back and check, but I think that's what I've seen. Yeah. If it's not fully loaded, 8 cores, maybe with 1 or 2 drives, yeah, it's about that.
And you said 8 cores. Which processor is it, Intel and AMD?
So this is AMD 4th generation EPYC Sienna processors.
Yeah.
We are one of the only ones.
4004?
No, it is the 8004.
The 8000.
Yes, that's a good one. So yeah, so this is the 8004 series, and they go from 8 cores to 64 cores, and they're extremely powerful yet energy efficient. And when I talk about energy efficient, the coolest feature that I see in this box, you can actually run a 64 core processor at 131 degrees Fahrenheit, 55 degrees Celsius. So that's how energy efficient they are. And they're also very cost effective. So it's kind of a combination between the 4001 you said, 4, and the 9004.
So
yeah.
how do you handle the storage challenges of edge computing? I mean, we're not expecting. I'm sure the electric group would love to have electric MP Mini everywhere, but what are you guys thinking? What's the group thinking for? How do you meet the challenge of storage for the edge?
Okay, so the storage requirement kind of varies by customer and kind of varies by workloads.
I mean, everyone has high availability.
Yes, everybody is different. So what we did, so this particular box can support up to 8 drives. Okay, 2 for boot, and right here we have the NS204, 2 for boot, and then you can either do 2 small form factor drives, which will give you up to 30 terabyte of storage, or you can also do 6 EDSFF drives, the slim form factor drives, and you get up to 92 terabyte of storage.
Wow, that's a footprint.
Yeah. And this is something that every customer loves. I wish I can take this out. Nails.
It's great that you're using those new form factors.
Yes.
92 terabytes? Yeah.
See? So these are M.2s that goes into that 90. The NS204, they are about 480 gigs. So you can get 2 of these for OS mirroring. So up to 8 drives.
92 terabytes DAS.
And then now that we're talking about server, so it has 4 fans in the back with N+1 redundancy, which basically means if one of them goes down, the server will still operate without an issue. And then it has PCI Gen 5 slots, 4 PCI Gen 5 slots, 3 for GPU or NICs, and then 1 OCP slot for controller or NICs. And then we also have the bezel filter I just mentioned, up to 8 drives, 2 for boot, 6 for storage, redundant power supply units. We have the chassis intrusion detection right here. We have Kensington locks locked in the back, and then we have a bezel lock right here. You can lock the bezel for security, and then it has all the server security that we typically offer with our ProLiant servers, the Silicon Root of Trust, IREV ID, platform certificates, and then we also offer the self-encrypting drives for data security. And yes, and you get the optional rack mounting kit and wall mounting kit. And for acoustics, it is definitely one of the quietest rack server that we have. And the reason it's quiet because number one, we are using Sienna, which is very highly efficient. And number 2, we are using the bigger heatsink and bigger fans, and that's the reason why we went with 2U, because with 2U you get awesome airflow, and when the airflow is good, your fans are not loud, so that's why it's very quiet. The decibel range kind of ranges from 35 to 55, depending on how you populate this. And then, as I mentioned, it can run from 23 degree Fahrenheit to 131 degree Fahrenheit, and it can also handle high shocks and vibrations. And then for management, we have ILO support, we have OneView support, and we have the HPE Compute Ops management. And then, like I said, it is supported by AMD SP6 4th generation Sienna processors, and they range from 8 cores to 64 cores, so very powerful. And then we have also qualified, I forgot to mention, we just launched it. So we also qualified the NVIDIA L40S, if you really want to do high inferencing at the edge. So we have the NVIDIA L4 and L40S on this box.
I might have missed, you covered airborne particles.
Yes.
How you address that? Can you repeat?
Oh yeah, right here.
With the bezel?
Yes, the bezel has the dust filter inside. Yeah.
Is that a washable dust filter or is it replaceable?
It is, it is not a washable dust filter. You actually, that's a good question. You have to replace this dust filter every 3 to 6 months, depending on how the environment is. We have a feature on ILO, OneView and COM, where on the 85th day of operation, the server will alert the customer that, hey, maybe it's time for you to check the filter. And if it's dirty, you need to replace it. And we do offer replacement filter kits with this. They can purchase that. Yeah.
When's ILO 7 coming? When's ILO 7 coming?
So that is a great question. We are on ILO 6 right now. We just launched it in September. It's still a brand new product. We are going to have a refresh of this box soon, but it's still going to be Gen 11, which is ILO 6. And the reason is that AMD has done a great job in making sure the next generation processors are compatible with this system board. So we don't have to change anything in the box. So the next generation will have the same box with the new processor and some additional cool features that we are working on.
Future, okay.
I think with that, I will hand it over to Gary, our HP Edge Compute Solutions Product Manager, and he's going to talk about all the incredible solutions that we have.
We're going to show one example. So thanks, everyone. So this slide, this used to be a IDC bar chart, but I figured bar chart is boring. So I took the data and changed to this. So, but all these are benefits that edge computing brings, or when you bring compute to the edge, these are the benefits that customers are seeing. And I figured this shows it a little bit better than just bar charts, because in my view, they're all linked together, right? By bringing compute to the edge, you're improving data security because you're now processing everything generated at the edge. And by doing that, you're reducing connectivity cost, and you're getting faster decision points from your data, creating better customer experience. So that's why I believe this view shows it better, but there's that core reason of why bring compute to the edge is you need to process that data generated where it's generated. You need to meet within that, what we call a real-time window, because traditionally you're passing the data outside to your centralized location for processing, for analytics. And once you get the data back, you're really outside of that real-time window, right? That data sort of becomes invalid. And that's why bring data to the edge bring compute to the edge is now what everyone is doing, and that ties to what Priya is showing. By 2027, 25% of the server will be at the edge. And this really shows all the industries that edge computing can apply to, and how we build a common architecture like the DL145 that meets all the challenges of these industries are facing for edge computing. But not just the common server architecture, but from your infrastructure architecture perspective, as when we deploy a solution, we want to create a solution blueprint that will apply to many industries at the same time. And also the systems and tools for management, where Chris will later talk about COM. So we take retail, for example, right? Customers, you have a retail store, you have IP cameras on site already, and then how do I turn that into something that I can deploy at the edge when I bring compute over? So our idea, the blueprint we're showing is I'm going to take 145 for example. In this case, we have IP cameras, real-time streaming to a DL145 for real-time analytics. We have a second DL145 for all your day-to-day operations, right? So customers are saying, we want to start deploying AI, we want to do computer vision at the edge, we want to analyze all the video streams, but we still have our traditional business operation applications. Those will reside on a separate DL145, or you can do it in a same system if it's a small site and you're not streaming a ton of cameras for analytics, right? But the idea is to run your point of sale system, your inventory management systems, your time card systems. But if you're a manufacturing side, you have your, you can analyze your like the defect detections. I kept thinking fraud detection, but that's FSI, which is also a use case for edge. And our idea is you're now processing everything on site, and you can pass on to your centralized data center for future training, right? Historical data for future training, and you have an IT team that can manage your distributed edge site. So if you're we're in Texas, and we use HEB, right? Let's say you have all the HEB sites are now doing this deployment. You're analyzing flow analysis, smart inventory management, things like that in the store, but you have your centralized IT staff to manage the entire deployment. So this blueprint, I'm going to keep calling it blueprint, can apply to a manufacturing site, right? It can apply to a healthcare location, an imaging center, things like that. So how do we deliver it? This really shows a life cycle. The goal is to show a life cycle management of the deployment. So up top, you have your edge infrastructure. So this would be our DL145 in this case. Management from the cloud, that's where our compute ops management comes in to stand up the entire environment, to manage your hundreds and thousands of nodes, distributed edge sites, and continue to manage the firmware and all the updates through that life cycle of your environment. But if I dive a little bit deeper to just the infrastructure side, because I know Chris is going to deep dive into the compute ops management for all your management piece. I know there was questions about the storage piece as well. And Electra, when we talk about edge computing, it's not, if the storage on the system is not enough, we always have that additional discussions about Electra. Do you need Electra on site? And also our Aruba networking, right? Edge sites will need networking capabilities. We have our Aruba networking. That's when we talk solutions, we bring those pan HPE products into the discussion as well. And of course, our hardware platform, but at the same time, we also partner with many industry partners like Canonical, HPE. We have our VME virtualized VM Essentials, right? Microsoft. We have Azure Local Integrated System on the DL145. Ranchers qualify. Spectral Cloud, we actually have this neat edge in a box, so you can have Spectral Cloud installed from the factory to the customer.
I'm sorry. This is the slide before this was the first slide that I saw with GreenLake on. After having a very good GreenLake smoothie, by the way, this morning. The question is from a cloud management perspective. I see the compute ops. Can I do? Is this a target for my GreenLake workloads? So as I'm thinking about my enterprise overall strategy for deploying apps, containers, etc., is this a potential target for a cloud architect trying to determine where workloads should run, refresh of those workloads, A/B testing, all, etc.?
From the compute ops management?
From my GreenLake, if I look at this from a GreenLake perspective, I'm a GreenLake customer and I need a endpoint to run my GreenLake VMs or my GreenLake optimized workloads. Is this a target for that compute?
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, but right now we're calling the flex solution, right? It has to be a custom solution from GreenLake.
So you guys are delivering the far edge devices in a GreenLake outcome?
It can be a GreenLake deployment.
Yeah, we do have a customer who's on GreenLake and they have edge devices, HPS devices.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it can be a GreenLake deployment.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be nice to put it in like a colo somewhere or something.
Yeah.
Well, but there's going to be both, right?
Yeah,
You need both.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on top of the OS layer, we also partner with AI ISVs, which I know we have an AI session later in the afternoon. But I want to call those out that we partner with Clarify. They rebranded Video. I need to change the logo, and also Stratavision. So those are some of the ISVs that we're partnering with to deliver a full end-to-end solution that will meet retail customer needs, manufacturing customer needs, for logistics, for healthcare. And I think with that, I'll pass it to Chris or Compute Ops Management.
Yeah, thank you. So as mentioned earlier, Chris Bradley, I lead the tech enablement team. And when I start thinking about edge deployments of servers, I think about how the pendulum has swung. It used to be that a lot of organizations would put equipment out the edge, and then there seemed to be a trend of, hold on, that's really hard to manage and maintain, and I'm tired of putting technicians on planes or having essentially guys driving across the country to go work on equipment and or dispatching a whole team to go stand up. And I know it's a use case that we've talked about a lot, but stand up a new retail shop, or to tear it down for that matter. So this idea of deploying servers at the edge ended up being a little bit complex. And if you just use one of the examples that Gary talked about, let's use Azure Local, little 3-node cluster running on the DL145 Gen 11. And I only have 10 office locations or branch locations. That's 30 servers that I, as the infrastructure guy, have to go manage. And if I don't have a consistent tool set to do it, and it doesn't necessarily look like what I operate my data center with, that could lead itself to some abandoned infrastructure that it was set up at one point. We don't really do a whole lot of operational maintenance on it because the tool set's different. It's out of sight, out of mind. So HPE has been on this trajectory for a number of years now to support our customers with a unified experience for management, whether it's in the data center, at the near edge or the far edge, with HPE Compute Ops Management. Now, it was mentioned earlier, HPE GreenLake. Compute Ops Management is an application within GreenLake. So whether it's deployed as a GreenLake offering or managed, it is still through the GreenLake platform that our administrators will manage the edge as well as the data center. So GreenLake and specifically Compute Ops Management has again been on this trajectory of trying to accelerate the usability of our systems, trying to regain some of the IT administrators' time for simple tasks like firmware and driver maintenance, just the care and feeding of a server. We have to be able to do it from afar. So usually the IT administrators that are working on edge systems are also the ones responsible for the data center. So they're centrally located. And we can save a ton of time and money by not putting people on planes or in trucks to go do those maintenance operations. So integrated with every platform, you heard it from Darren. It's expected that this DL145 has ILO embedded. And in fact, a future presentation will talk about how everything that we ship has ILO embedded in everything. So that silicon-based root of trust is embedded in every HPE ProLiant we ship. That is the foundation that enables the remote management experience for Compute Ops Management. It is the telemetry provider for Compute Ops Management or COM. That allows us to aggregate everything at a higher level through software we don't have to manage ourselves. Imagine, and frankly, I grew up in the industry managing my management tool, having to do firmware or having to do software and security patches of my management tool only so that I can manage the tool in which it is managing, if that makes sense. So I got a little laugh from the group. It's like, yeah, why manage my management tool?
So if I'm understanding, correctly,
please.
The relevance of this to edge is that a DL145 based edge deployment has ILO in it. Because it has ILO in it, and I assume you can do, remote updates of ILO.
Of course.
Right? GreenLake probably handles that. But because it has it in it, wherever you've put it, assuming connectivity, which is really shouldn't assume at the edge, but let's just roll with it. Your GreenLake, cloud-based GreenLake, wherever you are or your operator is in the world, can manage that server or that cluster in the same way they're managing on-prem, thanks to this sort of, I don't want to use the word agent, but I'm going to use it anyway. I'm sorry. Because the ILO is there, so there's less butts on planes because for those sorts of updates, you can do it reliably remotely. Are there particular elements of compute ops management that take account of connectivity issues, availability issues, latencies, that sort of thing that are typical in Edge as well, just so that that automation can take place and continue despite a different operating environment?
There are a number of things we can do to mitigate some of those edge challenges, things like latency, intermittent connectivity.
Physical security also can be.
Yeah, physical security. So of course, ILO, again, being I'm going to start with the physical security piece. ILO, of course, being the telemetry for things like chassis intrusion or device removal or system attestation every time it boots to ensure that firmware that is loaded is still legitimately from HPE and signed. The concept of grouping allows us to group things not only based on, let's say, application, but geography located. Depending on the deployment, and I am getting into a future session that you'll hear about that's dedicated to compute ops management, but think about a local secure gateway that if I plant basically a virtual machine in the edge location, it becomes a broker for the devices that it is managing for things like communication back to HPE GreenLake, as well as staging of packages for things like firmware updates. So envision a world where connectivity to one particular site on the West Coast of the United States, for example, just is, for whatever reason, intermittent. If the secure gateway contains all of the firmware and driver packages that I'm going to update at a future time, you're less likely to encounter a severed connection back to GreenLake while that firmware update is being executed.
Yeah.
If those dominoes were to fall in that particular order, you'd still end up with a successful update because the contents of what is going to be updated is already local at that site.
Yeah.
I think to Guy's point though, right? From a packaging perspective,
Yes.
right? If I'm thinking about Edge, right, I don't want to just think about compute. I want to think about the network, the Wi-Fi, and all the things that HPE sells in. You guys sell it all and you deploy it all, right? And I would love, because from a compute ops, I want an edge ops management platform, right? Are you guys getting into that where you have one platform to manage network, compute, perhaps security across the board?
I think our solution is HPE GreenLake because within it, we have Aruba Central, we have Data Services Cloud Console, we have Compute Ops Management, we have the Ops Ramp. There are a number of tools within the platform. Compute Ops Management is only one of them that enables that portfolio level management, whether it's wireless at the edge, whether it's data center networking, whether it's compute in the data center or at the edge, and the same thing with storage. So I think that is the platform that HPE provides.
Okay, well, here's a twist on that one.
Sure.
What about Redfish? Are you leveraging tools like that that are industry standard to cross-pollinate across these different silos? Are you enabling toolkits to turnkey manifest and turnkey execution? So on day zero, we have a bunch of pre-programmed, turn it on, boom, you're done. Are those things in the thought process of edge consumption today, or they're still wishful thinking?
I think there are a number of things that are already available as well as in the works. From a, let's say, day zero operation, you'll see in the demonstration a little bit later that there can be policies set up within Compute Ops Management in the concept of groups and adding new devices to groups and make magic happen. So policies are invoked on bare metal servers, all the way to an operating system deployment if necessary.
I mean, because you have the ability. You're the vendor. You're the manufacturer. You can standardize any slot, any config, any BIOS. You can make, like I said, magic happen, right?
Yeah.
So.
And I'm going to just iterate on the comment around Redfish.
Yeah.
Whether it's platform enablement at the individual server or leveraging APIs from GreenLake or specifically Compute Ops Management, we have that ecosystem as well. One of my favorite innovations as of late has been a PowerShell commandlet bundle for Compute Ops Management. So I can leverage my keyboarding skills and or the code at once, deploy many, to pull the APIs of Compute Ops Management and be the puppet master for deployment and management of my tools.
Yeah, because we're talking about all these different silos. Is there composability? Can you make that, because Redfish is obviously day zero, it's the hardware. But once you're past that, you have the, what's your hypervisor of choice? Is it VME? Is it Windows? What's the edge marketplace looking at right now? And are the use cases changing based on COTS? Based on different COTS and different type of data? I mean, I hope I understand.
Yeah, the edge has been evolving very quickly. Obviously, we've got great partnerships with a number of ISVs that Gary was talking about, as well as our own solutions being HPE VME, our Virtual Machine Essentials. And so, choice is there for customers. And we fully embrace those choices, whether it's Microsoft or HPE or Red Hat or SUSE or VMware, whomever. So we embrace that choice and do our due diligence to make sure that it operates as expected on HPE ProLiant.
Have you been seeing any customer requests for support of things like Redfish or those open standards?
If we do, they don't necessarily maybe make my radar, because the answer is absolutely yes. We are 100% Redfish compliant. HPE was a founding member pushing for that standardization that is called Redfish. So yeah, that's very intrinsic to every machine that we, or every ILO code set that we have.
I did like a 1,200 server build for Redfish. So there's customer need.
There is customer need. And that Redfish enablement probably started back with Gen 10 and has continued through Plus, 11, and now Gen 12 as well. So kind of land the plane here on the edge deployments. While we've focused a lot on the DL145, I do want to reinforce that we do have solutions purpose-built for given scenarios. And just essentially in general, you can see this ultra compact has been around for quite a while, what we call the microserver. So very tiny package, typically an Intel-based platform, no GPU support, but great for lightweight point of sale, SMB file share, let's say small, medium businesses, think of file shares, printer servers, stuff like that. To a rack mount as well as tower versions of some of the Intel-based machines. We've talked quite a bit about the DL145 as it is one of the newer kids to the portfolio, as well as some platforms that are really ruggedized, maybe more telco-focused DL110s. As an example, but another one of those machines that interestingly are front powered and front cabled, so that we're optimizing the cooling and for those type of deployments. And then of course, there are some environments that still need to follow their corporate standards and wish to deploy DL360s and 380s at the edge. Certainly applicable products for those, but maybe that's a one size that doesn't fit all, which is why we have some of the other flavors in the portfolio.
I just love to see a plug and play stateless edge OS level. Once you've provisioned it for Redfish, and then you just plug in what you want, and you're can consume and start doing real data analysis. That's what you want to do, right? You want to get it faster to that point, right?
Yeah, that is a lot of what we want to do is be able to provide an edge location with a machine, with something here on the portfolio, and with zero experience other than take the blue cable and put it into the RJ45 slot, and then turn it on or just plug it in, let automation take the rest. So that's absolutely where we think the edge is headed, and we're doing a lot of work in that space.
Thank you.